Here, there we go. She comes. Hi, everyone. Ah,
Hi.
hello.
Hi.
Hi, welcome.
It's my first ever Instagram live, so I'm glad I managed to figure it out.
Ah, congratulations. It's a rite of passage in this era, I think.
Yeah, definitely. It's something we need to get to grips with. Yeah, for sure.
Yes, yes, I think so. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you. How are you?
Doing well. Yeah, yeah. It's 9:30 there, is that right?
Yeah, 9:30
Yeah.
in the evening.
Yeah, okay. Okay. So a little chat before getting some rest, I hope.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I generally go to bed quite early, so this is almost late for me.
Oh,
But
okay. Well, thank you for doing it. We really
no,
appreciate
it's fine. Like I'm joking mostly. So yeah.
Yeah.
And you guys, it's lunchtime for you guys, is that right?
Yeah, yeah. 12:30 here. So, sort of midday and yeah, here we are.
Okay, cool.
So congratulations on the book.
Thank you, and
Yeah.
thank you for having me.
Hold it up again. Yes, here we go.
I
That
have my copy with
amazing
me.
cover, right? Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I love the colors. I'm really happy
Yeah,
with the
incredible.
design.
Yeah. And you're an artist yourself, so, right?
Yeah, I kind of illustrator. I never really know what the official difference is. I guess artist sounds a bit grander than
Okay.
but like, yeah, I love painting anything to do with food, sometimes other things as well. But I love just when I see something that catches my eye or I think it's pretty or interesting or unusual, I like to be able to paint it. So I'm kind of
Yeah.
I'm starting scheming the second book, so I'm hoping to get the illustrations in that one, which would be really great if we can get that.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Because I would think, I mean, how important is the sort of the design aspect to you? It's so striking. So I just wondered, like, how involved you were in choosing the colors and the style and those sorts of things.
Yeah, well, I mean, I sort of made a Pinterest board before I even pitched the book because I was obsessed with the colors in Italy. I think probably anyone that's been to Italy, you walk down the street and the kind of faded pastel colors of a lot of the buildings and
Yeah.
also the cars. Like I'm obsessed with the Fiat Cinquecento, which is such a
Oh,
cliche, but like
no. Hey,
everybody
why not?
everybody that comes to Italy falls in love with that car, and they're always in like a powder blue color or in a mustard yellow or like a really nice kind of washed red color. So I kind of fell in love with all of those colors, and I started collecting a kind of a board of like beautiful Italian images and also old pictures of Sophia Loren, and like I just went crazy with this
Yeah.
kind of inspiration board. And then I sent it to the editor, and she was like, well, we'll pass this on to the designer and we'll try and put everything into the book. And then we went to this town. A lot of the book was a lot of the oh, I just hit myself in the face.
It's late.
A lot of the kind of scenery shots were taken in this town just a little north of here called
Uh-huh.
Bosa,
Yeah,
where
they're
they have,
gorgeous.
yeah, the colors are just extraordinary. So
Like even just that,
yeah,
like right
exactly.
on the inside cover. It's just absolutely beautiful.
Yeah, exactly. So we kind of worked around, along with all the colors that I'd sent in provisionally. We worked around those pictures of Bosa, and the designer, who was amazing, managed to kind of incorporate all of those colors into the book itself and into the cover. So they did an amazing job. Like I couldn't be happier with it. And I know
Oh,
loads
yeah.
Yeah, I know loads of people who've been like, who have done books, and then at the end they're like, oh, I've kind of changed my mind about the cover. I don't love it anymore. But like, I'm still, every time I look at it, I'm like, yay, I love it. I
Oh,
love
yeah, rightfully so. Oh my gosh. And I mean the content itself is excellent as well. It's just, so wonderful when you sort of see it all come together that way. It's just really,
it. Yeah,
really great. So
thank
tell
you.
us a little bit. No, obviously you're not originally from Sardinia. So tell us a little bit about sort of your background and how you ended up where you are writing a book about, an Italian island.
So it's kind of like it's a bit of a crazy story. Sorry, I'm trying to just position my phone
That's
better.
okay.
So I was working in a restaurant in London, which was kind of Mediterranean-ish food, bit more Middle Eastern, actually, but a mix of kind of Spanish and some Moroccan and stuff. And Mediterranean food has always been the kind of food that I love cooking. You know, that food that kind of tastes of the sun, and anything that revolves around olive oil and lemon. You know, I'm absolutely obsessed with lemons, and I eat.
Just for our viewers who are familiar with food in London, you worked at Moro, right? That's where you're talking about. Yeah, one of my favorite places. So, oh my God,
a great place. Yeah, it's a really great restaurant. I worked for a while at Moro, but then I worked at they opened a new one called Marito in Hackney, which is where I worked, and the head chef is Greek. So we had like an amazing mix of cultures and ingredients, and it was just really, really, really delicious food. But I'd been working in kitchens on and off for about 10 years, and I was kind of done with the lifestyle. And I was just getting really tired of, you know, double shifts and like all of the insane kind of workload. So I was thinking about what I was going to do next. And I was born in Devon, which is kind of like countryside, English countryside. And I grew up in the countryside, and I always wanted to kind of build something or to open something a bit quieter, a bit more like kind of B&B, small little pub, restaurant, garden thing. And so I was thinking about what I was going to do, and suddenly this new chef turned up called Luca, and he was Sardinian, and we just hit it off like instantly. We were in the middle of a really busy time because we just opened, and the whole thing was really crazy. But Luca just has a great sense of humor. He's like the classic kind of jokey, jolly Italian. He was always cracking stupid jokes, and we just really got on well, and then we ended up becoming a couple, and then we were sort of talking about what we might be able to do, because neither of us really wanted to work in restaurants anymore. And we decided that maybe we could have a go at moving to Sardinia, because Brexit had just happened, and he wasn't really sure if he could stay anyway. And I was kind of up for it because I've always wanted to live abroad, and I really wanted to learn another language. And obviously, like Italy, well, you know, I didn't know anything about Sardinia specifically, but Italy, I was like, well, great, it's Italy, you know.
Yeah.
Of course. So we decided to move, and the first summer I worked, his parents have a kind of campsite with a restaurant attached to it, so I worked for them in the restaurant the first summer, and I got a really good insight into kind of Sardinian cooking. And then I started writing the book, because I knew I'd always wanted to write about food as well, which has always been kind of one of my passions. So I started writing the book, and then things kind of carried on from there. And then in the end, Luca and I ended up breaking up, sadly, but we're still really good friends, and he's super happy about the book. And he's really excited to finally get a copy, because I haven't even been able to see him because of lockdown and everything. So,
of course.
So he's like, everyone's talking about this book and I haven't even seen it, and people are talking about me, and he's like, I'm famous, where's my book? And I'm like, yeah, don't worry, like eventually you will have a copy of the book, I will show you. So yeah.
Oh, that's great. So we're getting a few questions about sort of what differentiates Sardinian food, and what would you say are like the staple ingredients of Sardinia?
Sardinian food, I would say, is kind of like I always say it's like a distilled version of Italian food. It's kind of even more simple in a way, and the focus kind of on everything being made at home, everything being kind of handmade if it can be. So like, you know, there's like sort of mass production, mass industry, mass farming doesn't really happen on quite the same scale. So everything tends to be, I mean, obviously there are supermarkets and stuff, but a lot of things tend to be, you know, you find a lot of people like selling cheese on the street from the back of a van or something that they've made in their garage, or they've made in their home, or so a lot of stuff is kind of made at home. It's small scale, you know, organic, just because it kind of has to be organic, not because it's a thing, but just because that's the way people have always done it. And the kind of staple ingredients, one of the things that makes Sardinian food very particular is Bottarga, which I talk about quite a lot in the book, which is this cured grey mullet roe. It's like the eggs. Yeah, exactly.
I love that I love that header of the section. It's just perfect. Like seafoam covered in caramel.
Exactly, which is, it's like the bacon. I think I say it's like the bacon of the sea. So it's like a really, it's a really kind of salty, umami rich, like delicious ingredient that you use in fish dishes or just in dishes on its own. And for anyone that likes anchovies or cod's roe or anything like that, like this is going to be your idea of heaven. And it's very kind of traditional in a lot of Sardinian cooking. So that's one great thing.
And that's kind of just for people like that's.
Yeah, so it's kind of like this orangey lobe thing.
Yeah.
And pecorino is obviously like a huge ingredient here as well. It's, I think Sardinia produces like 80% of the world's pecorino. So
wow.
There's a lot of pecorino made here, and there's all kinds of different forms, you know, aged ones and young ones and fresh ones, and all sheep's cheeses. And yeah, those are I guess two of the most like characteristic ingredients used here.
Yeah. And I also noticed a lot of artichokes as well in the vegetable section. Yeah. I mean, I think that's a very Italian ingredient, but it seems like they really thrive in Sardinia.
Yeah, there's a particular variety in Sardinia which is actually protected. Like it has like a DOP status, which is there's pictures. I think there's pictures of them in the book, and they're kind of very, very spiky and slightly greener than the ones that you normally find. But they also have every different type of artichoke here, and they grow really well here, and they have like a very strong flavor. They taste quite like the olive oil that they make here as well. So it's quite nice because you eat the artichoke with the oil, and the two of them kind of complement each other really nicely.
Yeah. One of the things that I really appreciated about the book, so you divided it into sort of the different Italian either meals or sort of the course, I guess, so to speak. But it really conveys the sense of the way that food is just sort of incorporated in life. You know, I mean, I think we in Western US and probably a little bit in the UK too, it's like we tend to like get very worked up about like, what are we going to eat for this meal? And like, sometimes don't even bother to sit down to eat it. You know, like it's almost like, I mean, I think people here can enjoy food, but it can also become like, just not just like, it doesn't just fit in the flow of the day. Do you know what I mean? Like I got a real sense of like with aperitivi and like all the snacking and, you know, sort of those sorts of things, that it's like it's more of sort of a ritual part of life, if that makes sense. And I just sort of rambled, didn't really ask you a question there. Do you have anything you'd like to say about that?
Yeah, no, I get what you were saying, 100%. I got it. No, you're totally right. I think the ritual of Italian food is one of the things that really like seduces people when they first visit Italy. It's definitely one of the things that really like seduced me when I got here. It's just people make such an art out of eating. Like it's not just like, you know, oh, we're just having lunch, or, you know, by mistake, it's like suddenly there's food on the table, but like it's always an event, and it's always something that people get really excited about and people really enjoy. And, you know, like you never eat alone here. It's really like at the beginning when I first arrived, I used to try and have like a working lunch, and I'd say to Luca, I'd be like, oh, I'm just gonna, you know, like have a sandwich in my room or whatever while I was writing, and he'd be like, no, like this doesn't happen in Italy. Like you come and you sit down with the family and we eat for like 3 hours minimum. Like you're not just gonna have a little working lunch. Like that doesn't happen here. So yeah, it really is like there's a real sense of kind of conviviality about it. Like everybody joins in, everybody stops, everybody comes together, and everybody makes a real thing about eating properly and eating well and eating like over an extended period of time. And I think it's something that at the beginning used to actually drive me a bit crazy, because I was like, you know, I'm quite like a hectic person, and I was kind of like, no, I want to do things, and I need to move, and I need to go here, and I need to, you know, I need to be working, and they really made me kind of slow down and just kind of take it in and really enjoy it, which I think is, you know, it's really essential. Obviously, like there's no point in eating unless you enjoy it. So
Yeah. Well, and I've wondered, you know, people make such a big deal, and it seems to be sort of in the US at least, like getting a lot of attention again because of a particular cookbook that just came out of like the Mediterranean diet. And I've often wondered if like, you know, that that how you're eating it is just as important as what you're eating it in terms, you know, Sardinians are very long lived, right? But is it as much the approach that they take to sort of life and the food as the food itself? I don't know.
yeah, I think it's I'm actually reading a book about it at the moment, which is called like the island of the ancients or something, and it's all about like why Sardinian people live so long. But I think it's a combination of taking it very easy, like, you know, the life is taken pretty easily here. People don't rush, people don't get stressed, there's no kind of anxiety issues, there's no like, you know, running around kind of crazily. So it's much more, yeah, it's a much more relaxed lifestyle. It's also, people are pretty serious about sleeping. I say in the book that, you know, people sleep a lot, like after lunch it's kind of traditional to have like a 2-3 hour little nap. And yeah, and then the diet as well, and also the wine, like red wine is good for you, you know. This is like, and everybody drinks a lot. Well, not a lot, that's the point. Like people don't drink a lot. Like in the UK, we got a big, you know, binge drinking culture. Like it doesn't really happen in the same way. Like people have one glass of wine with lunch, one glass of wine at dinner, and like that's it. But every day they'll be drinking. It's just, you know, like a small glass a day. But it's always like a really nice wine, like a Cannonau, which I talk about in the book, which are kind of really high in, like, it's really high in resveratrol, I think is the chemical, which is like proven to lower blood pressure and stuff. So it's kind of got, yeah, I think basically drink red wine, take it easy, sleep a lot, hang outside, like hang out outside with your family, and those are the 3 top tips for a long life. Like,
yeah. Well, and eat plenty of carbs and cheese, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, lots of cheese, pasta every day. You can't fail. Like this is your, yeah, it's the key.
Yeah. Well, and the olive oil too. Like it just seemed like that was one of the things that kept coming up through the book. Like British, you would try to introduce butter to different things, and people would always try to warn you off of it.
Yeah, they put like, it's quite bizarre. I didn't realize, because obviously like Italy, one of the things you realize about Italy as well when you spend more time here, or when you spend more time with Italian people, is how divided it is between the north and the south. You know, like it's like totally different countries, and the way that they cook is very, very different as well. So like North Italy is big on butter. So whenever you like read about a dish, an Italian dish that contains butter, it's probably originated somewhere in the north. And the south of Italy is much more focused around olive oil. All of the dishes contain olive oil instead. So I didn't really realize that butter wasn't really used here. So when I trained at a French cookery school, and I love butter. Like I've always loved butter, and like you know, like my cooking motto used to be like, if in doubt, add more butter. And like I came here and I was always trying to put dishes in butter. Like I was always trying to put butter in dishes, and everybody was like, no, take away the butter. It's so bad for you, and no wonder all you English people are fat. And like,
oh wow.
We've got a really bad reputation in
Italy.
Yeah,
well, I'm sure. Yeah. Americans, as well, I'm sure.
Yeah, we're basically like grouped together.
Yeah.
We're as bad as each other. We're all obese. Like we just eat butter with a spoon at home, and we're all lazy as well. That sort of thing.
Excellent. Excellent.
Yeah, they're very very disparaging about everybody else, but yeah, it's part of the fun.
Yeah.
But yeah, the olive oil is big here, and very kind of just very like part of everyday life. You know, everybody makes their own, or they have a friend that makes their own, or they have a neighbor that gives them some, or they have they have one tree in their garden and they make enough, or whatever it is. But yeah, and that's obviously one of the things I love, because I really love olive oil. So I was super happy to come somewhere where it was everywhere.
So we have a question from Karen. She's asked for you to elaborate on several typical pasta dishes and vegetable dishes. Do you have like a...
What, there's, so one of the most traditional pasta dishes, the malaredas, which are those like little kind of ridge nuggets, which are a bit like cavatelli. So like you find them in other parts of Italy with different names, but in Sardinia they're called malaredas. That's the page in the book.
Yeah, I was just looking for it. Yeah.
Yeah, and they sometimes put saffron in the dough to make it like a really beautiful yellow, and obviously to give it like a nice flavor as well.
And that's you're making them in that picture, is that?
Yeah, that's them.
Yeah.
So those are served with a sausage ragu, which is traditional, which is a really nice dish. And then other pasta dishes, the Sardinian ravioli, the colagioni, which I also make in the book, and I put a video on my Instagram of how to make them.
Oh, great.
They're a little bit more involved, but you know, everybody's got time on their hands now, so maybe it's a good project to have a go at making them.
Totally.
And that once you get the closing method, it's really satisfying because they start to look, you know, they're really cute with the little pleats in them. So those are good pasta dishes. And then vegetable dishes. I put some nice salads in the book, which are not necessarily 100% traditional, because Sardinians tend to keep things very, very simple in terms of vegetables. Just kind of the only seasoning is like salt or sometimes a little bit of olive oil, and that's it. Not even like acidity. They normally don't even put, you know, vinegar or lemon on their salad. So it's kept very simple. So the salads that I put in the book are kind of like my interpretations of some like Italian vegetables that you might find, and then you could put together in a nice and delicious way, because I also really love putting fruit in salads. So I've like, yeah, so that like the fig one is one of the
ones my God. Love. Yeah.
And I mean, like, it's not untraditional to eat figs with prosciutto in Italy, so that's just kind of like an elaboration of that idea with a few more ingredients. And then there's another one with persimmon or kaki fruit. I don't know what you call it in America. Do you call it kaki, or
we call it persimmon? That's how we pronounce it. Yeah, that's one.
Okay, the persimmon. Yeah, that's a nice one as well, because those grow really well here. So yeah, those are nice veggie dishes.
Yeah. So I was interested sort of how you walked that line of introducing sort of traditional dishes versus sort of putting your own spin on dishes, you know, like what, because how did you approach that?
It's a really good question. And I actually agonized about it and had sleepless nights about it, and really like, you know, called my friends who are Italian but maybe have traveled or live abroad or like work in different parts of the world, and was like, are Italians gonna kill me if I change this recipe, or will I be like ostracized forever for tweaking something to my own taste or something? And I think, you know, I tried to say what was really important for me to get across in the preface was that although, like, yes, this is kind of a book about Sardinian food, I'm not trying to give like 100% authentic representation, because, you know, if I was, there would be 40 dishes to do with sheep and like 40 dishes to do with pecorino, and then like nothing else, because the true cuisine of Sardinia is really, really, really classic and really, really rustic. And I think I wanted it to still be food that people would cook in modern kitchens. So I really tried hard to find a balance between dishes that were kind of true to the history and the culture of Sardinia, and dishes that would actually be made in, you know, a kitchen in America, or a kitchen in the UK, or a kitchen in, you know, anywhere else in the world, where people would just be able to buy things from a corner shop or a supermarket. And I think, you know, I'm not 100% sure that I managed to do what I set out to do, but I really hope that like there is a dish in there for everyone, and that I haven't like betrayed Sardinian like tradition, because I think, you know, it wasn't really important to me that there were some dishes in there. And I mean, like, you know, this is kind of one of the things about cookbooks. I think I have cookbooks that they have all kinds of recipes in them. You know, they have recipes in them that are probably just there for the sake of kind of history and
Mm-hmm.
reference. Like, they may not be dishes you ever make, but they still need to be in there because it tells
Right.
the story. It tells the story of a place, and it tells the story of a culture. And to not have that dish in there would be kind of immoral in a way. So like, I've put a recipe in the book for a whole roast suckling pig, which is the Sardinian national dish. Like, if you go to any festival or celebration, they're gonna get a small pig out and put it on a spit and roast it for you, which is like obviously absolutely delicious. But also to have like a recipe for that. I mean, how many people in a small like apartment or flat in a small oven in a city are going to be able to find like a small pig and roast it in their oven? It's not, it's not that realistic, but it was important to me that we still got it in there because it is the national dish of Sardinia.
Yeah.
So
Well, these are strange times. You never know.
yeah, when people have got a lot of time, maybe it's a good project. And I have actually done it once myself in England in a small oven, and it was quite
Oh, wow.
traumatic. but,
Very good.
but
Very
yeah, I
good.
mean, it was delicious, but slightly traumatic in the process. But yeah, worth it. I mean, if you're a keen cook and you're into your meat, then it's definitely worth it because it is very, very good meat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you had the story around that. You put sort of your recipe for roast chicken in the book. And I thought that sort of your story around how that came to be almost like exemplified sort of the approach that you were taking to your cooking there. Do you want to tell us a little bit about kind of how that came about?
Yeah, so that was a kind of a little moment of victory for me against like me versus Luca, with him being like, no, English people don't know anything and you can't cook, and me being like, oh, I'm going to show you and I'm going to use butter and you're going to like it. And he did, like, he loved that chicken recipe, and we gave it to like all of his family, and they were all like, oh, okay, buono, like, what did you put in this chicken? And I was like, butter. And it was just, but I mean, it was really like, it was kind of an amazing meal in the first place because his dad has a farm and they'd raised this chicken themselves, and so it was really like a big deal for us to eat this chicken because they raise them themselves, they feed them on scraps, and kind of like the way that all meat would have been produced in like 100 years ago or whatever. So I just found this chicken in the freezer in the house where we were living, and I was like, oh nice, I'll cook this chicken. And then he saw it and he was like, this isn't just any chicken. Like, this is, my father raised this chicken. It's really important. We have to have a party if we want to eat this chicken. You have to invite like 12 people. This is a really big deal. And I was like, okay. So we ended up having this party, but I said I wanted to cook it my way, which is this way with butter and anchovies and rosemary and garlic and lemon, which is like one of my favorite recipes of all time, because I love anchovies and butter and lemon, and I love chicken. So I made this recipe, and he was so, he was really scathing the whole way through. He was convinced it was going to be a disaster. And finally, when everyone tasted it, and they were like, this is delicious. And so it was like a small victory for me.
Yeah.
But it's, I think the whole, like, the beauty of any culture meeting another is when things overlap. And I think like there was a quote that I read from a travel writer, and he was like, the great thing about traveling is not like seeing how much like divides us, but how much like joins us, how many similarities there are. And I think like one of the amazing things about food is that it can like fuse things together and people together, and bring people together. And I don't think, one of the great things about Italian food is that there is this kind of focus on preservation and like really maintaining regional kind of specialities. And I'm not against that. I think that's a great thing. But I also think, innovation, creativity, like the joining of different ideas and different cultures is also a great thing. So I don't think the two can't, exist together.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And so how has that cultural adjustment been for you? You've been there for a couple of years now.
Yeah, it's every day is still like a learning experience. I never, you know, I never stop learning. And actually that's one of the things that I love about being here. You know, it's not like no 2 days are the same, and every day I learn that I should have said this instead of that, or I should have done that instead of that, or I learn a new phrase in Italian, or a new way of cooking something, or a new way of doing something. And I think that's, you know, that's one of the great things about when you move to a different place, is you just, you know, you just carry on learning forever. And that's one of the nicest things about being like an immigrant. You know, you just experiencing another culture is just, it just never gets boring. And I think it's really been an amazing experience to be able to kind of be in people's homes. And one of the best things of all about cooking and food is that it makes people open up, you know, like even if people are a bit shy or a little bit closed, or maybe not necessarily very friendly to begin with, like all you have to do is mention food and they're like, oh yeah, I have this, you know, I have this way of cooking this which works really well, and actually my grandma cooks it like that, which, you know, and suddenly people don't stop talking. And I think like it's such a great way in to just be able to talk about food with people. And you know, all of the friends that I've made in Sardinia, I've made through talking about food. Like it's all I ever talk about. I'm literally like, you know, how do you make your pasta or whatever, and suddenly, you know, you just see their face like open and they're like, well, I'll tell you, and blah blah blah. And it's just a great way of kind of getting to know people. So
yeah. So your Italian must be getting a lot better then, since you.
Well, I'm kind of fluent conversationally, which is really satisfying. Great. But I still haven't learned in a school or kind of learned the grammar, or so my next stage is to actually study the grammar and do some proper reading and writing, so I know how, because I couldn't write anything in Italian. If you asked me to write in Italian, I wouldn't even know where to start. But yeah, if you asked me to go to a market and, you know, ask for some good vegetables, then I'm fine. But it's my priorities. You can see my priorities. Like I can order in a restaurant, I can get things in a market, but there's no way I could write you a letter or anything. So yeah, that's my next.
So then when you were writing the book, I mean, obviously you learned a lot from Luca and his family. Were there other people that you went to on the island, or other people that you learned from, or that it was important to you to sort of tap into their expertise?
Yeah, I think so Luca's dad is a very social guy, and he has a lot of friends who are really keen kind of gourmets, or it's funny, it's very kind of like old school divided in Sardinia. Like the men cook meat, and probably only meat, and then the women do everything else. So like most of Luca's dad's friends will cook meat, but not necessarily anything else, except for like a couple of them who are just fanatical about everything and know. So there's one guy called Gianni who I said thank you to in the book, he's just like he's a kind of fountain of knowledge, and he really helped just talking and telling me about kind of history and the way that people used to do things. And he's got this amazing house with a beautiful wood-fired oven outside, and he bakes bread every week, and he's a really interesting character, so he helped a lot. And then another one of Luca's friends is a cheesemaker, and he told me a lot about cheese, and he was really generous and gave me a lot of information. And then the place where we shot a lot of the book actually was this really beautiful bed and breakfasty type thing in the center of Sardinia. And the family that run that, the mum does all the cooking, the son makes his own cheese. The photos of the cheese making are all of Samuel, the son. And he told me lots of stories, and his mother was an amazing cook, and his sister made us delicious cakes. And so this is the thing about Sardinia, everyone has a recipe, everyone has a story, like everyone you meet tells you something, so it's just kind of never ending.
I love that cat.
Yeah, that's my cat. She's really happy to be in the book. She's a celebrity cat. Yeah, I'm glad she got in there.
So after all these weeks, you might be sick of talking about this by now, but how have the past sort of 2 months been for you as someone you know, like you're not with your family. You're in a place you're still adjusting to as you're kind of going through all of this with isolation and whatnot. How has that been for you?
Yeah, it's been a really strange time because obviously I mean, I had a kind of whole promotional tour and a
Yeah.
launch party and everything else planned. And then it's actually my birthday as well in like a week. So like I had like I had like 2 3 months of promo stuff, you know, like cooking events, my birthday, my launch party, seeing my parents, spending Easter with my parents, and then like all of that, I
Yeah.
literally just went through my diary and just crossed everything out.
Wow.
It was such a depressing moment. But I think, you know, I just feel really lucky that I am in, you know, the place where I live now is in the countryside, so I can still go outside, I can still walk the dog, I
Yeah.
can go for a run, I can, you know, do a little bit of gardening. I started planting a few things, and like I'm really grateful to have that because, you know, I can't imagine what it would be like if you were closed up in, you know, in a city block or an apartment or something. It must be a
Yeah.
nightmare. So I feel really lucky to have that. But yeah, I mean, I can't say like it's not the best time to publish a book, obviously. But on the upside, you know, I think a lot of people are cooking a lot, and I hope that like the book has kind of allowed people also to kind of escape and
Yeah.
yeah, to kind of imagine they're somewhere else and to kind of have a sort of virtual holiday. So yeah, I hope that there are some, you know, there's some positives as well that have come out of it at the end of
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. So if someone were to decide, you know, I can travel, this is over, I want to go to Sardinia, are there like a couple of things that you would just recommend that people do or things that they see, something they may have to be sure to eat? Just a couple of top tips, I guess.
Okay, top Sardinia. Well, definitely. Obviously, you have to go to the coastline because Sardinia is famous for its beaches, and you know, it's surrounded by beaches as an island, so you can't really go wrong if you go anywhere on the coast.
Yeah.
So I definitely recommend some beach time, and if you can, take a boat because there's lots of little islands off almost every part of the coast. So if you can take a boat trip, and they should be quite easy to find, then get a little boat trip and go to one of the islands for a day or just for a few hours or anything like that. I would definitely recommend that. And then I would recommend spending a day probably in the sort of interior as well, because it's so different. That's one of the amazing things about Sardinia, is the kind of contrast between the beach, the coastline, and the interior of the island, and try and see some Nuragic ruins, which are these kind of strange towers that were built by a civilization before the Romans. And those are very characteristic of Sardinia. And then definitely eat some fish, try
Hmm.
and taste some Bottarga, probably eat some fish pasta, so some type of spaghetti with clams or spaghetti with mixed seafood, or fregola is a very nice type of pasta which is often served with fish. It's like those tiny little kind of almost like couscous.
Mm.
So that's a really nice thing to eat. And then what other top tips? Yeah, buy some cheese, buy some salami to take home, take some olive oil home, and yeah, just enjoy the beauty of Sardinia.
It sounds lovely. I mean, it's always been on my list, but I think your book sort of moved it up the ranking a little bit in terms of
Yeah, well,
places I really
yeah,
want to visit. Yeah.
hopefully as soon as we can all travel, yeah,
I
everyone will
know.
come.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Is there anything that we didn't talk about that you wanted to make sure people know about the book, or anything you wanted to cover?
um, I don't think so, actually. I think we've kind of said almost everything that I wanted to talk about. Yeah, I mean, you've asked me very good questions, so.
Oh, good. Well, it was easy to talk about. I mean, seriously, I keep going on. It's so great. The inside is as beautiful as the outside.
Yeah,
Um,
so. I'm gonna hold up my copy as well.
yeah, exactly. There you go.
I love the back. The back doesn't
Oh,
get
the
enough.
back is gorgeous. And all like the inside, I didn't even really show. I'll just take 1 second to show one of the chapter. You know, like It's just so, the design is beautiful. The content is great. It's just, it's great.
Yeah,
And
I
a
love
good one to lose ourselves in, pretend like we're somewhere else.
also the ribbon. We had to fight really hard.
Yes, I love a ribbon, and I was so delighted to find the nice yellow ribbon in the middle of your
Yes,
book.
I'm very excited about the ribbon.
We've had one question about, before we go, did you have a favorite dish from the book?
Favorite dish. Oh, thank you for people that said happy birthday. Did I have a favorite dish? Oh, it's always a hard question. It's like your favorite film or your favorite book, or well, I really love Bottarga, so I really love the Bottarga pate. For me is kind of heaven, because it's like fishy saltiness mixed with a lot of butter, like an obscene amount of butter. So it's kind of like, for me, that's a really great, yeah, that's a really great mixture. And I love the cake, actually, the blood orange and ricotta cake.
Oh yeah, that looks amazing.
Which is super moist and tasty and delicious. I love that. And I love, I'm trying to have a quick.
Yeah, see, I marked that one.
Yes, that one is very delicious. And I love the Campari granita, because I love Campari. There's too many. And the chicken with the anchovy butter, obviously, because anchovies and butter and chicken.
Yeah. Sounds so good. So good. Letitia, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, it was so lovely getting to talk with you. And
are you in the bookshop at the moment? No. Yes.
I am not. No, this is my house, basically.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I like the background.
Yeah, thank you. Little staircase, yeah. It's my whole family is still home. My kids aren't in school and all that stuff, so I keep like having to move around different places to find a quiet place to have these conversations. So yeah.
God. Do you know when it's gonna like ease up for you guys?
No, so we're on a 4-phase plan, and we are in phase 1 right now. So at the shop, we've been able to start curbside pickup of books again. Okay. And in phase 2, we'll be able to start having customers in again. So, but, we're all trying to sort of limit our time there so that there's not too many of us there at one time. And we have a kitchen in the shop and have turned that over to cooking meals for healthcare workers at one of the hospitals locally. And that they're in the middle of doing all of that right now. So I haven't been doing many of these from the shop because it's like cooking and everything sort of happening in the background. So yeah. A little noisy. So yeah.
That's a great thing to do though. I feel very like annoyed that I'm sort of helpless here. I can't do anything for anyone. It feels very frustrating. I'm like, I want to
but that, yeah. I mean, there's so much. God, we could talk about this for another hour, right? Like all just like the impact on life and like all of the different ways that people are adapting and trying to figure out like what we do to move forward. I don't know. We'll have to see. We'll have to see. But I hope that you guys are, coming out of it. It sounds like Italy got hit really hard. And so
I think, I mean, it's been pretty severe here, but supposedly next week the restrictions get a little bit lifted again, and then
good.
We're allowed to go swimming in the sea.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of nuts because you're allowed to do sport, but you're not allowed to swim. So everybody's like just buying windsurfing.
Oh, right. This is how I will get into the ocean.
Windsurfing. Yeah, I'm going windsurfing. It's totally legal.
Wow.
Then, you're just not allowed to stay on the beach, but you're allowed to go on the beach. It's slightly. Yeah. I just think no one knows what's going on. It's
no. Well, I mean, we've been making it up as we go along, right? And like trying to, there's just no way that the government, even if your government is actually doing something about it, can think about every possible scenario, right? So, sometimes I think it's like whoever they last talked to, is like,
exactly,
like this is why this thing gets to happen and the rest of us will just have to wait. But anyway.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for taking the time. Congratulations again on your book. And happy birthday. I hope that you get to have an actual celebration.
Yeah, me too.
Whatever that means.
I think, yeah, I'm going to go to the beach and I'm going to swim and hopefully, yeah, drink some beers and eat a sandwich, probably.
That sounds perfect.
It's kind of all I want. It's fine. Yeah, that's good.
Excellent.
Okay, have a great day.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, have a good evening. Good night.
Thanks very much. Okay,
thank you.
bye.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.